Facebook. This is being streamed live on Facebook, so big up the Facebook users. I actually started on time tonight for a change. I'm normally about 5 to 10 minutes late. But as you can see, I'm joined by a guest tonight, Roberto. He's going to explain a little bit about what he does and how he does it, and then we're going to get into the show talking about, obviously, what it says in the title. Martinelli. I'm not going to pronounce his name again. I'll let you do that, Roberto. And then we'll talk about Arsenal. But welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Lee. Yeah, absolutely. For those that don't know me, my name is Roberto Rojas. I am a journalist for Beinsports here in the United States and doing other freelance stuff. I also am part of the podcast that you were on a couple years ago, Lee, the Low Limit Football podcast that I do every Monday with my co-host, Gjorgjievski. And what I specialize is in, of course, the reason why we're going to be talking about today is South American football. I am of Paraguayan descent, but that means that just because of that, I can also talk about other things in this really interesting sphere that is South American football, with so many talents coming about from across the region that have helped Arsenal in one way and also have gained more interest for them to straighten in the long term. So, yeah, thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it, man. And like I said, like you said, I was on the podcast. I enjoyed that, actually. That was really good. And you're doing good work as well, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
You're going places, so keep it up. But I think the only place to start is with Gabriel Martinelli. I mean, last night, wow. Again, he is just blowing Arsenal fans away. I mean, yesterday, I could see it from two sides. He got a little bit lucky that Kante slipped. Yeah. But at the same time, running full pelt at Kante made him flap a little bit. But I mean, to the pace, the power, the aggression, the will to win, and the finish when he got through was just unbelievable. And then he capped it with that little folded arm celebration. I mean, obviously, you gave me a little bit of a heads up. I can't lie, right? And I've been gloating ever since, yeah, when you said about Martinelli back in June to me. Yeah, I've been sipping on that tea with a little pinky finger ever since, right? Because not many people knew about him back then. I didn't have a clue who he was. So thank you for giving me the heads up on him. But what do you make of his time at Arsenal, and how far can he go? How far do you think he can go in the game? And will he still be at Arsenal?
Well, to be fair, Lee, I think a lot of people, you say that there's not a lot of people that known of him inside of those of the Arsenal fan sphere, but also in England as well. But if you go back way beyond his story, there weren't a lot of people that knew him in Brazil. He came out coming from Ituano in the São Paulo state, a team that the thing in Brazil as well that they have in comparison with the first division, second division, they have those state tournaments that comprise of the 26 states that the country has. And he was a part of it. He was a part of this Ituano side when he was 16, 17 before heading up to Arsenal. And even then, he was an unknown. But then, he comes to Arsenal practically, a player that, even to my extent, I thought that he would be a good piece for the team, but I didn't expect him to flourish this greatly that what we saw in the EFL Cup and the Europa League and of course now in the Premier League. He's been sensational. I think, to have that kind of bottle and what we saw yesterday, for him to run 65 yards past everyone. Yes, he did have a little bit help with that slip from Kante, but to have that kind of power and will to score at Stamford Bridge and to do that kind of celebration, I mean, this kid's a phenomenon. I mean, he 10 goals this season. He really is flourishing, I think. Not just under Emery, but also under Arteta as well. He really is someone that I think Arsenal really have a bright gem here. They're a team that are known for spending and whatnot, but to have those type of players at a young age, and I think it's like the first teenager to score 10 goals since Anelka as well. I really think he has a bright future at Arsenal. I think now with that stock becoming much, much higher, there are only certain clubs that are able to steal him away. But I feel like now in the position that he's in, that if he continues to get that kind of time and depth and just develop, because you have to know the kid's 18, he's not going to be a world beater yet. But if he continues to find that form, if, Arteta's putting him in a position where, you see him on the wing, but he could also play centrally, even more forward and more deep. They really have a gem here, and I could see him play at Arsenal and build that kind of team in the future for years to come. Personally,
yeah. So I mean, I can't believe how good he is. Genuinely, for somebody so young that's moved completely different part of the world, and we've seen bigger and better players come over here. Falcao being one of them. Falcao was probably the third best player on the planet when he moved to Man United, and that flopped. And you know, to see somebody come in, I mean, London's a massive city. You know, you could get lost in London quite comfortably. But you know, for the guy to come in to come into a massive football club, not speak the language, and get starts at Arsenal, even though it was the EFL Cup, then the Europa League, but now to be starting pretty much week in, week out at the moment in the Premier League, and to do that yesterday was like, yeah, that's a coming of age. That was yeah, this is Stamford Bridge. This is my time to shine now. We ain't got Aubameyang in the team because obviously he's suspended. We were down to 10 men. And I mean, his energy, I know. So I go back to some, say for example, like Michael Owen. I remember when Michael Owen burst on the scene and he scored the goal against Argentina, and he just blew up from there. He was just relentless. But the energy levels of somebody of that age, like a Michael Owen, like a Martinelli, they don't stop running. And you know, it's all well and good having that energy and that work rate and that passion, but then when he gets in front of goal, he is ruthless. I've not seen such a good finisher at that age since Michael Owen. You know, and I don't want to overdo it and put him up on a stupidly high pedestal, because listen, if he goes on to have half the career Owen did, then he'll be doing all right, wouldn't he? But my one fear is that we're going to have the Barca's and the Real Madrid sniffing around him, maybe in the summer, but definitely next season, if he continues on doing what he's doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, you know, you're right. I mean, one thing I want to add, that he was actually learning English before he did come to Arsenal, because I think he was preparing himself for that jump in Europe. So, you know, the fact that I think he was already mentally prepared for what is to come, that he was, you know, prepared that, you know, I'm not going to just be here in Brazil for the majority of my career. You know, I want to go and go in bigger things, you know, which for a Brazilian player like that, huge country, 200 million people, all have the same dream, passionate about football, wanting to make that big jump. For him to put him in that position and to have that mentality to come in and do that, yeah, I think the sky's the limit for him. But like I said, and like we both said, he's only 18. He has a lot to improve as well. And what we see, we don't want him to peak too early, as we've seen with, you know, other players in the past who have done that. But, you know, if he has that kind of mentality, if he's willing to take the opportunities, as, you know, like you said, the suspension from Aubameyang, you know, then, you know, I think the sky's the limit. I think he really is going to do something for this team. And yeah, as you said, you know, money talks, you know, when the Barca's and Reals and the other, even clubs in England, you know, the Liverpools or even that, you know, coming with those types of big money, you know, then the thing is out of control, in my opinion. But I think Arsenal really have a good gem that hopefully they could have for one more full season, and he could flourish under Arteta.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing him play again. I can't wait to see him play. I love him, man. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And the attitude in the guy is superb. But let's move on to another Brazilian. I'll let you pronounce his name, because I've been pronouncing it wrong the whole time. But I'll let you go on about him.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I'm not Portuguese as well, or Brazilian, so I can't really pronounce it properly. But what I've been told, and from what I've been listening to it, his name is Bruno Guimarães. The pronunciation of the little A at the end is always the hardest. But yeah, this is Bruno Guimarães, the player that is interested from Arsenal. He's a 22-year-old defensive midfielder playing for Atlético Paranaense over there in Brazil, who recently, just 2 years ago, had won the Sul-Americana, which is the equivalent of the Europa League over there in South America, which was the first international title ever for the club. And he's been great. I think he's been considered in a team that is really dominant on the attack. Last year, all the headlines in Brazil was heading to Flamengo as the team of not just of Brazil, but also of South America, that won the Libertadores, won the Brazilian League, you know, won all these titles. But he was included in that team of the year as well, which is kind of the outlier when the whole team was dominated by Flamengo players. But he really is one of those like key players, and I think he's also one of those important players that Brazil continue to produce at defensive midfielder. You know, when you have the likes of Fernandinho, Casemiro, Arthur playing in that kind of holding role in the midfield, Guimarães really comes in as a player that is very versatile. I think he's someone that is good on decision making. He's able to read the game well, has good stamina. He's a good passer. I think he has like a range of like 90% accomplished passes so far playing for Paranaense. But, you know, he's also good off the ball and on the ball as well. I mean, he really is someone that I think you can compare him in a way, I guess, with size-wise as in Xhaka. But I think with him, you probably become a bit more versatile. I think with Torreira, as you know, even though he's a bit bigger than Torreira, I think the issue with Torreira as well is that, you know, maybe he is good off the ball, but on the ball, you know, he isn't as accomplished. Whereas, you know, we have Guimarães, he's someone that could really present opportunities, passing the ball to wide positions, maybe to a Martinelli or a Pepe or someone along those lines. And I think he really is someone that is going to flourish. Currently, he's on the U23 side for Brazil at the pre-Olympics, which is the tournament that will determine the two teams to qualify for the Olympics in Tokyo. And at the moment, yeah, Arsenal are still some of the bidders for the team. I think Lyon are also one of the other ones, which makes sense given the connection that we're both teams. You know, Edu at Arsenal and then Juninho Pernambucano at Lyon. He seems to be someone that is worth the money. I mean, he's worth the 20-30 million pound asking price that Paranaense are having. So I think he really would fit well in the position of Arsenal, because I think he would suit well into that holding role as a midfielder, being able to play passes out wide or straight to the striker. And yeah, I think he really provides a bit more, something maybe a bit more than what Xhaka or Torreira could provide in that midfield role.
No, I'm glad you've cleared that up for me as well, because I've seen a lot of people talking about him, and he's gone from a DM to a deep line playmaker to a box-to-box. So I'm glad you've cleared that up, that he is officially a defensive midfielder, which leads on to the next question. If we do sign him, and I know that Benfica have put a bid in for him, Lyon have put a bid in for him, we're in talks with his agent apparently, and with his club. If we do get him, do you think that spells the end for Torreira?
As much as I really liked that move when he first came to Arsenal from Sampdoria, you know, I think he's one of my favorite players to watch. In a way, probably not, because I feel as if though, you know, they're both of a similar age group. I think Torreira is like maybe 1 or 2 years older than him, but they do play in the same role. Yes, I understand. But I think for the player like Guimarães, you know, perhaps, you know, as you said, we had this discussion about players coming into a new league, new surroundings, and you know, like I said, London's a big city and Arsenal's a big club. You know, you don't want to be slotted in right away. I think that was the case with Torreira when he first came in. But maybe we could see him as a rotating player. Maybe you can have both of them play in that role in that midfield. I think the question will be what happens to Xhaka and what his future pertains, and also with the age that he's at. I think you could play him both ways. I think you really could. But yeah, that's really a good question, Lee. I think when it comes to both the players, they are similar in a way. But like I said, I think the difference between both of them is that, you know, Torreira is good off the ball as well, but maybe not as good on it. Whereas, you know, Guimarães provides both of that versatility and both of that depth and creativity. So yeah, I don't think it serves as the end for him per se. But it will be interesting to see what his role would be if they do sign him, because I think if he does put in good performances and really beats Torreira for that starting role, then yeah, that might mean the end for the Uruguayan. As much as I hate to say it, because I really like him, you know, even though he isn't the biggest player, but he's got that good work rate, he has the heart, he really provides a lot to the team and shows that. But out with the old and in with the new, I guess, when it comes to these type of players. You know, it's a conveyor belt when it comes to these type of new players that come in.
Well, no, exactly. Listen, at the end of the day, you can't really go wrong with South Americans in your team. They've all got that will to win. You know, there's so many that have come and gone in the Premier League. I mean, Luis Suarez is probably one of the most famous ones. I remember the handball he did. The handball against, was it Ghana?
Yeah, it was Ghana. Yeah, in the quarterfinals.
And that just showed. Then they missed the penalty, so it was. You know, that's South Americans just have this different ruthlessness to some of us Brits. But obviously, you're an Arsenal fan, hence how we first ever started talking, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, you're an Arsenal fan, and I wanted to ask you, thank you for explaining more about Bruno as well. I'm not going to pronounce his surname, but thank you for telling us more about him. I wanted to ask, where do you think we will finish this season? Because, I mean, obviously we started the season off with Unai Emery. We then got rid of Unai Emery. We went on Freddie Ljungberg. And then from Freddie, we're now on to Arteta. I wanted to ask, firstly, how do you think Arteta's doing? And secondly, where do you think we'll end up this season?
Well, actually, I do want to clear it up. I'm not really a fan of Arsenal per se, but I do appreciate them. I do have another appreciation, I guess, for the Premier League itself. Obviously, for myself, being involved with the whole Almiron transfer as well. When he first came to Newcastle, I kind of felt an affiliation for them, but I do appreciate Arsenal. I'm not going to say, oh, I hate them, you know, or something like that. But I do have that good affiliation for them, and I always do see their matches. In terms of what happens this season, I mean, it's really been a roller coaster of a ride, you would say. I think from going from Emery to Ljungberg to now to Arteta, you kind of have to really think to yourself what could happen. But it has to be said that they really need to freshen up and straighten in the transfer window, because I look at this team, and for all the attack and, you know, the rumors of what we're getting in the midfield and in the attack, they really need to straighten that defense. And then we saw that even yesterday with the whole David Luiz red card. They really need to straighten up, and it's been an issue for them all season. I think that's the case that has to be done. You can have so many good attackers, but if you don't defend properly and hold those leads, then it'll be tough. I mean, they still have, you know, other domestic competitions to play. You know, they have the FA Cup against Bournemouth, and then they have the Europa League against Olympiacos, I think, if I remember correctly. So they really have a good opportunity in them to do something and hopefully win something domestically, you know. But I just think that with this race being so tight, you know, with your Man Uniteds, you know, your Wolves, your Sheffields, you know, who's been a kind of a revelation as well. You know, Everton are back on the way up because of Ancelotti. You know, it's such a tight race over there in the Premier League for that 4th and 5th position. If Chelsea keeps stumbling up the way as well, you know, that leaves even more opening. But I personally think that I trust Arteta. I think I really like what he's really been doing, learning from Pep Guardiola at his time at Manchester City. He really is someone that's I can appreciate, and also having that identity with the club, and you know, he was the captain of Arsenal, and having that kind of role, you know, he's familiar with the surroundings of what it may be. But I feel like if they can really turn it around and put in performances like that, you know, get wins and get results, and hopefully be competitive domestically and internationally as well in the Europa League, I could personally see them heading into the Europa League spots again. I think it might have to be the case of them winning something domestically, like an FA Cup, or maybe even a Europa League, where, you know, to be fair, they're still one of the favorites. But I think if I want to give my gut honesty, I think they'll still be fighting for those positions for the Europa League. But I think it will have to come to the case of, for them to qualify, if they do miss out, if they finish 7th or 8th, then they really have to put in that priority to win a title in the Europa League or in the FA Cup.
I mean, a lot of Arsenal fans don't like the Europa League. I've actually enjoyed it. You know, I got bored of us getting hammered every single year in Champions League. You know, and my fear is, I mean, we're a million miles off Champions League at the moment, but my fear is that maybe next season we could get into Champions League and then we get hammered again, and it's back to the revolving door again, you know. So for the last 2 seasons, I mean, I know we got absolutely battered by Chelsea last season's Europa League final. The season before, I still feel bitter about that, because I was at both of them games against Atletico, and we should have been about 3 or 4-0 up at the Emirates. And then Koscielny did what Koscielny done sometimes, and gifted Griezmann an equaliser. And then Diego Costa obviously scored the only goal over in their ground. And that was semi-final stage. And I was thinking, if we had got to that final, I think we would have won it. And I mean, that was Wenger's last season, obviously. You never know, if we had have won it, it may still be here. But we went with Unai Emery, and we went one step further and got to the final. And I really believed we'd do it. But the reason I like the Europa League is the fact that we actually have a chance to win it. And that was my one issue with going into Champions League every year. It was just comfortable just getting out of the group. And we didn't really do what was required to go on and try and win it in terms of player signings, in terms of starting personnel week in, week out in that competition. And in a way, I'm kind of glad that we're not in it. But at the same time, it does bring bigger revenue streams in. It's just whether Arsenal would then go on and spend that. But I agree. I think that top 4 is too far away. Top 6, we need to pull our finger out. Otherwise we're not getting in the top 10, let alone top 6. But I've kind of written this season off in terms of league. You know, whether you finish 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, it's irrelevant. You're still nowhere near the top. But I think the FA Cup, it's going to be difficult. Man City, Liverpool, they're the teams, aren't they? You know, Liverpool are just relentless at the minute. And Europa League, you've got Salzburg, Inter, Ajax. That's not going to be easy as well. But I do think that the way we defended yesterday, the way we've defended even at home against Chelsea a couple of weeks back, I know we lost the game, but I think we played all right in that game. And the way we played against Man United has given me a little bit of hope that when it comes to the European competition, Europa League, we can actually defend, especially at home, and then maybe go away and just park the bus and play with Pepe, Martinelli on the break. I don't know. But I do think that this season, like I said, I've kind of written it off. I wasn't Arteta's biggest fan when he came in. I caused a bit of a meltdown by saying that. And I'm still not his biggest fan. But I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. He's here. This is his honeymoon period, essentially. And then I'm going to be very interested to see what he does in the summer in terms of personnel out and personnel in. Because then next season is when I'll then go, right, this has now got to change from what we did last season. Because he's coming halfway through a season and they're on their 3rd manager, if you include Freddie. So they've had 3 different managers telling them different information. And I can kind of see why we've been up and down, mainly down. But this season is just like a pre-season, I suppose. You know, it's a pre-season for some of these players, and then he decides at the end of it who stays and who goes. And like I said, next season for me will be the big one. But if we can pick up an FA Cup or a Europa League, I'll be over the moon, especially Europa League, because we haven't won in Europe for a long, long time. And it'd be nice to do that. But we're going to do a few more minutes of this. We'll read out some of these comments. If you guys want to get some questions in for Roberto, that'd be great. We'll do maybe another 5-7 minutes or so. Do drive the likes up. Thank you to everybody watching. I know the graphics on my screen ain't great on my side. I know a lot of you have been complaining in the chat, so I don't know what I've done with my green screen today, but my head is a little bit blurry. But you're fine. Maybe I should go back to not using a green screen.
All natural, man. All natural.
But thank you to 600 people watching this live. Do drive the likes up. And we'll read out some of these comments and questions as well. A lot of people, let me ask you this, because a lot of people are criticising Mesut Özil in the chat. What are your thoughts on him?
I feel as if though he is a player that's really maybe not as misunderstood, but I feel like he better needs to utilize himself. I mean, I've always been a big fan of him in terms of how he plays and what he brings to the table. But there's just some times as well that, you know, I think he really is a polarizing player when it comes to how you view him, how important he is to the team, how important he isn't on the team as well. But I feel as if though maybe he just needs to provide a bit more. I mean, he's already been at the club, what, 7 years now? 7 years. So, you know, for him to kind of get that reputation, I mean, I think this was a player that really wanted more. And, you know, he was able to accomplish, you know, domestic titles. But I think he really wanted to get more of him from a career standpoint. I mean, I think he still really has the talents to provide for Arsenal, but at the same time, you know, he's coming of age. He's 31, so he turns 32 next year. You know, he's going out with it. He's really, you know, in the last few years of his prime, you would think. But I think he still can be important if utilized properly. I think that's something that has been an issue, I think, as well. You know, with the likes of you know, Aubameyang, Lacazette. I think if they are utilized properly, they can really flourish on the attack. But I think with Ozil, I think it's just the case of it. You know, his time is kind of running out, and he really wants to get something big. And I mean, big as in, like you said, you know, like a Europa League or something, and I guess finish it off in a few years.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely splits opinions. I mean, I can't stand him, if I'm being completely honest. I don't see anything he does that's good anymore. I can see why people still have that little affection for him, but a lot of people are asking. Chris said Martinelli or Rodrigo.
Ooh, wow, that's a good one. It's kind of hard, really, because Rodrigo is Real Madrid side that just has a lot of youth in itself. They just signed Reinier Jesus, the newest gem, you would say, from Flamengo, heading to Real Madrid. I mean, it's so tough. I mean, if I had to put in a top 5 maybe of best young talents, maybe the ones that are under the age of 21 or like teenagers, yeah, I mean, I think it's him. I think it's Sancho. I think it's Haaland after what we saw at Dortmund. I think it's Martinelli as well. He's in that list. Tonali, maybe I'll give you one more name. They're really good players. I mean, if I had to choose, I mean, probably Rodrigo, just because he's at the bigger club, he's getting more opportunities. He scored a hat trick in the Champions League. I mean, you can't get that's something you have to recognize. But it's really that's a good one. That's a really good one. But if I had to pick, I think Rodrigo. But I think it's by this little, just because of what Martinelli has proved, in a way, and kind of. You would think he's kind of a bit of the underdog, because Rodrigo is more of a player that was more established. He was at Santos. He was one of the bright talents as well. Then comes to Real Madrid and, has done properly well. But I think in that sense of what he provides to the table, I would put Rodrigo. But I do like the underdog story in the way of Martinelli, of coming in kind of unnoticed and then flourishing at the moment here in the for Arsenal.
DVS Dallas, evening to you, buddy. He says, what South American defender should Arsenal look at?
Well, I think there's a lot of really big talents happening at the moment. I think there's always going to be someone that flourishes in terms of talent, really. I mean, I guess one name that I could really think of at the moment, coming back to my roots of him from Paraguay, there's this player called Omar Alderete, who plays at Basel. He's a defender that really is good in the air, good tackler, kind of a bit unnoticed as well. He really isn't that big of a deal for Paraguay because he hasn't played on the national team, but he's 22 years old. He's really flourished. He was just named in the Swiss best 11 this season. And I think his value is like around 10 million, if I want to say, in his release clause. If I had to pick one, the first one on the top of my head, I think it's him. I think he really would be great to see. And I think going back to what you said, Lee, I think you've always had an affiliation for South Americans, because, they come in and they really are in a way, they fight and they go around that adversity, as you said. It's hard enough to go and play football here and there in South America, just because of such a big gap, as you would say, in from an economical standpoint or from a social standpoint. They see it as a way of getting out of that dangerous vices that come in, like drugs, alcohol, all that kind of stuff, violence. And for that, I think when they come here, they have something to prove. They want to prove something. They want to make themselves proud and provide that kind of heat in the moment kind of a thing. So that's something that I'm sure you can appreciate, and I've definitely appreciated when it comes to South Americans coming to England.
I think that they appreciate it more as well, because of where they come from. So like when you see the likes of Alexis Sanchez, when he's come out with stories saying that he couldn't even afford football boots, and his family saved up for months and months and months to buy him a cheap pair of football boots. He's playing outside on the rocks and the sand and whatever in flip-flops or no shoes at all. So they have that little drive, that extra drive, and when they get to the top, I love their mentality, man. South American mentality is brilliant. I want to ask very quickly before we wrap this up.
Sure.
We was linked with Everton Suarez. I've probably butchered his name as well, and Yan Couto. I've probably got that wrong as well. But firstly, the Everton one has disappeared. That story's gone. I've not seen anything at all in this window linking us to him. And obviously, Yan Couto was linked to us very early in the window, and that's disappeared. How good are both of those? Because, like I say, we only go off over here what we read in the media. Obviously, you see these people, you know these big players, you see them on a regular compared to us. How good are they?
For Everton, I mean, yeah, that was a weird case because he's really a player. I'll pronounce it as well, just to make sure. Everton Suarez. So yeah, you kind of got it, but hey. In terms of what Everton provides, he really is a player that can flourish on the left wing as well, and kind of similar. He really was the player heading into the Copa America last year. Neymar was out, so he was really in that position on the wing, playing well, becoming one of the standout players, I think, in that tournament where Brazil won on home soil. But it's kind of a weird case now. I think he's 23 years old. He's still at Grêmio. I was really shocked to think that he was still there because, in a way, the Brazil standards, and I think you can say this for Young Kuta as well, I think they really have provided a case of where, you have to go in now. And I think this was the standard for a lot of South American players. You want to go in early, that, just in case it doesn't pan out, you could still get them early and like 23, 24, in case they do not shine over there in Europe in general, that they can come back. I mean, the big case we could have is for Gabriel Barbosa, who, came in with a lot of hype from Santos, went to Inter Milan, didn't really flourish as well, didn't do anything, went to Benfica, didn't do anything as well, came back to Brazil, flourished under Flamengo. He's the best player, I think, in South America at the moment. He's only, 23 years old. And it's like that. I mean, I think that's the case. There's always going to be someone that comes out that you want to get them right now. And, if they don't shine, then they don't shine, and you just continue to find. I think that's the unfortunate part, I think, as well, of football in a way, is that, you want them to shine properly. You want them to shine now, be them in the moment, because if they can't shine and you have time on your limit, then they're just going to go find someone else. Personally, that's how I see it. And I think that's as much as you could really appreciate the mentality that South Americans have. I mean, the big one, I think, is for them to surpass everything and to get out of that pressure and not and flourish as well. Because if not, then you're going back to your region, going back to your country, and then they're just going to find the next bright talent that comes up, because it's always going to be there. There's always a conveyor belt of players coming out, but it's all about being in the moment. And what have you done for me lately? I think that's how I see it.
Exactly. Listen, thank you very much for coming on. I genuinely appreciate it, mate. And yeah, you're welcome on anytime you want. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody watching this live. 600 people still watching this live. Let them know where they can follow you on socials, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at Roberto Rojas97, all one word. And as always, I'm always talking about just world football in general. I think not just all of South America, but I'm obviously going to be focused on that. Obviously, I'll be in touch with anything that happens in the Libertadores, which just started yesterday, actually. Always coming out with the bright talents. We got World Cup qualifiers starting in March. Copa America, got a lot of things happening over there in South American. And yeah, that's generally where you'll find me. And hopefully you can appreciate it. Maybe sometimes I'm not always going to be right, but hey, as long as I'm being honest and genuine, I hope you guys can all appreciate it.
Exactly. Well, thanks very much. And thank you to everybody in the chat. I will be back at 9 o'clock doing another live stream. This time I'll be on my own, all by myself. But yeah, make sure you guys come back and check that out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the content around. Thank you to everybody on Facebook who watched as well as YouTube. And I will be back at 9. Laters. Heaps.